pass that. So, with that being said, I want to first of all again thank everybody for joining in. We're all very busy, and it means a lot to me that you're taking the time to join in. I am a board certified internist for those who may not know me. I have practiced in the Harrisburg area for the last 25 years, and also in the last 10 years have added integrative medicine into my practice. I am board certified in lifestyle medicine and currently about to complete my board certification in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. The whole purpose and reason for this topic came to me almost like an aha. And this was from room to room, talking with my patients, meeting with wellness concierge clients, and even those on the integrative telehealth platform. It became clear to me that a lot of the questions we had were not quite being addressed at the primary care level by a lot of primary care providers. Many patients would still come back to me even after seeing their gynecologist on hormonally related symptoms. And it became clear to me that this was a topic that, because of so much that happened in the last 20 years, there was a period where people were on hormones, which were, as you will learn very soon, of the synthetic kind. And we had a big, big study that came out about 2 decades ago that created almost a bit of confusion that most prescribing doctors stopped prescribing synthetic-based hormones, that all of them have been lumped into that hormone category. But today we're going to first start by maybe discussing what is the difference between synthetic hormones and bioidentical hormones. Dr. Wayne Myers is going to take that. He has been so kind to join me because I asked that I would love to have a PharmD of his stature who has not only been on the forefront of hormone replacement, but also compounding. And this is an area that he knows not only very well, but I felt he'd be the best person to give us a little bit more enlightenment. After that, I'm going to spend maybe about 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the most, going through a few slides. My goal today is not to make it very academic and not too theoretical, but just to keep it a little bit simple. But I really want to dive into questions. I'm excited that a lot of people sent in questions. And the whole point and purpose of this is to make sure we get through as many questions as possible. And in a way, some of the questions will help us understand better a little bit about the process of hormone replacement, the process of hormone interactions, as well as protocols. So I'm going to turn off my mic. Wayne, I'll let you take it from there.
Okay. Well, Dr. Jatto, thank you so much, and thanks for everybody that's on with us. Um, we I've been in the compounding business for over 18 years. I've been a pharmacist we were actually celebrating our 24th anniversary at our store here today. So just keep that in mind. And if I pause, it might be to admit some other people in. But I first of all wanted to just touch on Dr. Jatto asked me to talk about bioidentical hormones and the difference between that and synthetic. So first of all, the one difference is bioidentical hormones are coming from natural sources. And the big thing when you're talking about bioidentical is their chemical structure is the exact same as what we would produce in our bodies. And so they're going to give the same physiological responses as the hormones that we have in our body. And then the nice thing is because we do derive them, we can customize it and we can make the right dose, the right balance of those hormones for you, as opposed to synthetic hormones. They're not typically found in nature. Their chemical structure is different. I'll show you a chemical structure here in a second. I'm a chemist by training too. My undergraduate degree was in chemistry, so I sometimes get a little excited about those chemical structures. Not so much really, but anyhow, but they are different. And that's what you got to keep in mind. And so something that like Prempro is not going to work the same in our bodies as if we're using progesterone. So progesterone or natural progesterone benefits, you can see it promotes life, provides protection against breast cancer and endometrial growth. It increases bone strengthening, bone building, normalizes blood clotting, restores libido, acts as a natural antidepressant, to name just a few things. It can make us tired and sleepy, and that's actually, if you take it orally, is a good thing. So many times we're struggling to sleep well. And I think the big difference when you can compare the progesterone to synthetic progesterone, what's in Prempro or Depo-Provera, I mean, that's a contraceptive. And the side effects, early abortion can cause breast cancer, osteoporosis. So kind of the exact opposite, weight gain. So you see that there's so many positives to progesterone versus synthetic progestins. And you can look at that with other hormones as well. But again, we want to put into our bodies exactly what our bodies produce. We start to lower the amount that we have in our bodies, and we need to raise that to optimal levels. So again, there's just the chemical structure. There's a difference there in the extensions, the groups that are on it. So I don't want to get too lost in that. So in general, though, traditional hormone replacement uses synthetic or animal-derived hormones. In fact, Premarin comes from the urine of horses. That just doesn't seem appealing to me at all, to be wanting to put something in your body that's the urine from a horse. But it's oftentimes fixed doses. It's a one size fits all approach. You have a lot of other negative effects there as well. But then bioidenticals are coming from plant derived and natural sourced. We can customize the dosing, fewer side effects, and there's multiple delivery methods. So again, you can see broadly the big difference between bioidentical hormone replacement and traditional hormone replacement. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Jatto and let her carry us from there.
Thanks so much, Wayne. So we'll work together and collaborate. I'll have you helping me out with slides. So we'll move to the first round for me. Why is this topic even relevant today? There's becoming a better awareness in the community, and there's a groundswell of awareness that we now realize that there is a big system in our bodies. Hormones are the master regulators of our actual health. They actually drive every cell in our bodies from the very day we're born or conceived, actually, right into adulthood, through fertility years, to our middle years, and as well as when we get into our older years. And it's going to be important in our talk on bioidenticals to think of hormones as the big picture, all hormones. So we are connected. We have three major systems that interconnect all the hormonal pathways. We have a big organ called the hypothalamus. It's in our brain. It sends messages to a very big organ called the pituitary gland. This gland is constantly by biofeedback, meaning signals, deciding how much and how little to make in other organs that make hormones, like your thyroid gland, like your adrenal gland, and even our sex glands. So they're all interconnected, and every cell needs a little bit of some of the things we've discussed in all the hormonal systems to operate. And I will quickly add the pancreas produces hormones. Everyone has heard of insulin. So that also fits into that hormonal system. So this big system is essentially the master puppeteer of the entire grid of sending messages throughout our bodies. So the next slide. These are common signs and symptoms of hormone imbalance. And you would see that many people begin around the perimenopause. Perimenopause simply means we have about a 5-10 year period before you actually go into menopause, where women start to pick up on a few things. Maybe some changes in mood, feeling foggy, some changes to the skin, maybe some skin elasticity issues. But this is a time where we start to notice a lot more people who never really had health issues begin to notice a few things like blood pressure changes, blood work suddenly showing up as blood sugar slowly creeping up, and even cholesterol levels. We know that There's more to the signs and symptoms of hormonal balance. But as we get into some other slides, we're going to go a little bit into how this can present in your puberty years, perimenopausal years, as well as postmenopausal years. So next slide. So I think we're now at I would say, crossroad. We're going to have to maybe rethink what it means to age and what it means to get old. Now we're beginning to realize that aging and getting old are not necessarily the same thing. Many factors are going to be at play when we look at chronic diseases. We realize there's genetics, there's lifestyle, there's also that term epigenetics, which means that intersection between lifestyle and genetics and the things we can do to either turn on or turn off these genetic predispositions. Hormonal therapy is going to play a key role in optimizing our health. It's going to play an even, I would say, bigger role in the longevity factor. So this is something that makes us more convinced now than ever to get the word out, that we want to rethink aging, we want to rethink health, and we want to go back to that paradigm of rethinking hormonal health care as essential to wellness. So next slide. Okay. So this is good. This kind of helps us think about this in not just the, for instance, the very common symptom most women have maybe during the menopausal years complained of, like hot flashes. But hormones regulate, especially the female hormones, they regulate our brain function, especially the estrogen pathways. They regulate nerve health. They build up our immune systems. They help with our skin and hair, which is our protection against the outside world. Our metabolic rate changes over our years. So from pre-puberty to puberty to premenopause and menopausal, there is going to be changes to your metabolism, muscle mass, bone mass. And of course, the one that I think everyone can connect with is reproduction and sexual health. From becoming fertile to libido to vaginal health, all of these will be essentially impacted by hormones. So next slide. Okay. So the fluctuations begin literally pre-puberty. So before you have the full maturation of your secondary sex organs, which means breast tissue and secondary sex characteristics, there's already a tiny beginning of the hormonal changes in our preteens. By the time we get into puberty, it becomes obvious to others that this young boy or young lady is going through that change. This is when we start to see those recognizable signs that a young man or a young lady is about to go into her puberty. And for women, it's the beginning of that menstrual cycle. So the menarche is what we call it. But hormones are still playing a huge role. We have cycles where women will have issues with fluctuations, where they may or may not have regular cycles. So we see that back and forth interplay, even in our 20s and 30s, with fluctuation patterns. In our 40s and 50s, we have fluctuation patterns. And some of these can come up with heavier periods, skips in periods, closer periods, and all of these have some background with hormonal fluctuations. So at every stage, depending on the fluctuation and the effect it has on the entire body, sometimes it may require a tailored approach to manage this. Next slide. So when you're thinking about biohormones and the replacement therapy approach, we want to paint a picture here whereby you really want to think of this as individualized, because no two people come from the same family history. We don't come from the same background. We don't have the same environmental exposures to toxins, things that can disrupt our natural hormone productions, our lifestyles. Also, we have other medical conditions that may already be existing. They may have an impact. We may be on prescriptions that are very necessary for certain conditions. They may have an impact. The gynecological history is extremely important when you're seeking a provider to discuss whether bioidentical hormones would be maybe right for you. a good physician would want to know things about your family history. Is there any possible history of gynecological cancers or cancers in general? And take all that information along with the proper workup to determine the best course for you. So the goal is going to be really about balancing the system and not just replacing hormones. So next slide. So based on what I had just said, it should actually include a good clinical history. There are ways in which you can start to cluster around certain symptoms that can allow your provider to get a little bit clearer about what types of testing need to be done. Hormone testing is a definite must, but I will put it out there. At the beginning, we had talked about how the hormone system is connected. A lot of providers may also want to get testing to know about your other endocrine systems, like is your thyroid gland working fine? Are your adrenal glands being overworked or underperforming? Are you having issues with other hormones that get signals from the pituitary gland? There are ways in which you can have certain tests to check on them, as well as basic lab work to make sure other factors like nutrition are not playing a role. So all of that would, in my opinion, be essential to maybe getting a very good assessment so that there can be a better tailoring of your plan of care. Next slide. So this is going to be a conclusion where we now know that this is just as important to restore the vitality and balance. It's going to require a sea change in the way we see things. It's going to be in addition to quality lifestyle choices of good nutrition, sleep, exercise, stress management. But when you put all this together, there's no doubt that that level of added on value will allow you to take charge of your aging process and feel like yourself again. So thank you so much. So what I think we'll do, Wayne, next is I'm hoping that people take advantage of throwing questions our way in the chat box. When a lot of people signed up, they began to send us questions so that, by the time this event occurs, that we can at least start to get through some of these questions. So we're going to start with the ones that we do have,
Mhm.
but I would love to get participation on those who are currently on the call too. So we're going to do our best to try to make this as interactive as possible. And, raising a hand, chat, whatever, please feel free to go through. But we do have some questions. We can start with that as we
Sure.
build.
Well, yeah, I'll ask them to you, and again, I'll remind everybody there's a chat feature if you're not familiar with Zoom. If you just scroll down, the box should come up, and you hit chat, and then you can type your question in there. You could also unmute yourself in a moment, and then we'll make sure that just one person's speaking at a time, though, is all that I would ask. And then I'll recognize you if multiple people jump in. I just unmute one person at a time so that we can talk. But while I'm asking some questions that we have seven questions that were kind of a collection of what we'd received already. You can start typing your questions in or formulating other questions. But the first question I have here, Dr. Jatto, is can perimenopause start in the 30s?
Okay, great. So the answer is it can. Absolutely. And there was a slide where I talked about all of us have certain genetic predispositions. We have had environmental exposures. We have other medical histories that could play a role. The answer is yes. And this is some of the reasons why I thought we should do this. That's a common place where we could miss it because you could come in your 30s complaining about fogginess, exhaustion, sleep, irritability, and that may not be on the top of the list of things to exclude. You can begin to have hormonal fluctuations in your 30s, and there is a condition called premature ovarian failure, where some women have literally gone into premature menopause by their early 40s. So you can begin to have the symptoms in your 30s.
Just a definition of perimenopause versus menopause.
So perimenopause is described as that period where you do have your menstrual cycles, but there's beginning to be the fluctuations. There could be a little bit of a drop in the estrogen production and the ovulation cycles. So that means that possibly some progesterone levels are changing, some estrogen levels are changing. So you may have a cycle, but you may begin to notice a few things. The cycles may be taking a little longer in between sessions, or you may even have regular cycles. However, you're beginning to have some of the very symptoms we discussed. And upon assessment, sometimes we can have testing to show that some of the levels are actually dropping. And you're a sensitive person to hormonal regulations and dysregulations. And in fact, you're at the very beginning of that journey. So this could be 10 years before that point of menopause. And that's why women in their 40s need to be included in this topic. That yes, these are the years where you could have these symptoms, and we may not put this on the top of our to-do list when we providers are meeting with you. So you may have to initiate this discussion with your providers and say, could this be? Advocate for yourself so that we don't assume it's sleep, it's stress, and we kind of put it in other buckets.
Mhm. So how long, if someone starts on BHRT, will it take to start to see results?
So this is a good question. And again, there's going to be a variety of answers because I have seen patients in 4 weeks give feedback saying, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so much better and I'm resting better. My hot flashes are better. And I've seen patients say incrementally, a little bit better, but not quite there. So I would like us to think of this as the same way if you were to meet a medical provider and start a blood pressure pill. He's likely not going to start you on the highest dose. He first wants to possibly see how you respond to the start, get feedback from you, and there begins that adjustment and tailoring. And I think it's going to be fair for me to say it depends because you may be one of those who needs a little bit, less. But what if you're one of those who need an adjustment or two? So I'm going to ballpark it and say it could be as soon as a month. It could be as far back as maybe even 90 days to get it right.
And the person that asked this question, they're 6 months in and hadn't experienced a difference. And my thought is they probably haven't been adjusting the hormones enough
Right.
to notice a
Right.
difference.
And if I may piggyback off of that question, since you gave me some context, 6 months is a point where you have to take a break here and say, okay, something needs to be rechecked. I'm going to use this as an opportunity real quickly to say there's such a thing as excess too. And this is the tricky part. If you're not being properly assessed and you're just getting hormones, adjusted, nobody's asking you to get tested, you could have a progesterone excess or an estrogen excess and feel just as crappy as having little. So when you get to that 6 months ballpark, it's time to reconvene and say, wait a minute, I don't feel better. Was this about hormones, or is there another pathway in the whole hormonal based system that we need to look at? Do we need to look at the adrenal glands? So, my question would be this. I think that maybe you still need hormones, but what if it's possible that there's a whole nother system that hasn't been adequately addressed, and now you're looking at that rearing its head up versus the hormones are not working?
Agreed. They're like a symphony. They all
Yeah,
work together. And
yeah.
yeah, so that's a very good answer. Um, and so several questions about weight loss. Can BHRT be combined with a weight loss program?
I love it. Most of my patients and those in our wellness clinic know that weight management is my passion too. And I don't know that you can separate them. I think that every woman can identify with this. We all recall just before periods having bloating and weight gain. We all recall post babies struggling to get the weight off. We all notice the changes in our body fat distribution as we go through the 40s. We all see the changes once we get through menopause, how hard it is to lose weight. So basically, what that tells you is that from a nature standpoint, estrogen is a muscle builder. Estrogen ramps up your metabolic rate. Progesterone is that wonderful balance to estrogen. They are just as vital in your weight loss strategy. So, in our practice right now, before you begin a weight loss journey, be on another agent like, say, a peptide, semaglutide, or better yet, any of the other GLPs or GIPs. We do want to get your hormonal full picture because in some patients, Losing weight by itself is not the long-term solution, but the balance is the long-term solution of all the things that have become dysregulated. So I think that they're so intertwined that I don't know that you can successfully lose weight if somebody's not paying attention to your hormonal health care. In the big picture of it all, your thyroid hormones, your gynecological hormones, your adrenal hormones, they all will contribute in some way to the balance of your weight. High stress could affect your adrenal glands, and your weight could simply plateau. And that may not be because you need more medication. It may be because you have other issues with your hormonal system that have not been put on the table. I think they're all, in my humble opinion, well interconnected.
Right. And sometimes people aren't losing the weight because their hormones aren't balanced.
Right.
So it makes sense to do it hand in hand. You can obviously take them at the same time. Yeah, so very, very good.
That's a good question.
Yeah. Talk about the safety of BHRT and if we're to be on it long term and what the safety would be.
Okay, that's a good one. I think this is where we can talk a little bit about what a protocol should look like. I think that for most women who decide after having an assessment that this is a course that they want to undertake, will be discussing with their provider on a strategy of how long should I be on it and when should I take a break. For those who are still with their cycles, sometimes the plan is to follow the hormonal cycle patterns to mimic that with days off per month. In postmenopausal ladies, there is a day dedicated to being hormone free. But at the end of it all, my recommendation would be that every 6 months or so, you take a break. The question next would be long term. What's the efficacy? What's the safety? What is the possible risk? And when I hear those questions, what I think I'm hearing is a lot of the shadow that came 20 years ago from the Women's Health Initiative. Because what they're basically telling me is that I am feeling great, but I don't want to put myself at risk for blood clots. I don't want to put myself at risk for breast cancer. This will be a way to say, when that study came out, we were looking at a synthetic form of progestin, not progesterone. And there was an increased risk for blood clots. There was an increased cardiovascular risk. There was an increased risk for breast cancer. And I do want to also mention that the estrogen that was in that study was an equine estrogen that is synthetic and was taken oral. And what that means is that it's going into the body in such a way that you have to have an amazing gastrointestinal system, clearance from the liver to make sure you don't have metabolites that can inadvertently cause a problem. So bioidentical hormones have been proven to be, for now, long-term safe. Wayne, I would love you to jump in on that. Based on your experience as a compounding pharmacist, what
Yeah,
is your understanding of the data?
yeah, my understanding of the data is where you get into problems is if you have unopposed estrogen. Women need to be on progesterone as well, and that progesterone is protective. Yeah, different forms of estrogen can have a greater risk, but when you have that progesterone there, that's protective, and that's when the risk is minimized. Um, so the question here too had to do with the BRCA gene and then age. But I think ideally you want to optimize those hormones and you want to optimize them for your lifetime because progesterone, estrogen help our brains, help our bones, help our hearts, and so we want to continue on it at the optimal level to keep um, all of our body healthy throughout our entire lives.
So, with the person who talked about the BRCA gene,
Mhm.
it goes to say that when we look at bioidentical hormones, there is something called bias. We have two estrogen molecules combined. You have estradiol and estriol. Estriol is protective to the breast against breast cancer. And as a matter of fact, most compounding will have a higher proportion of that than the estradiol. And this is done to make sure we get the good of the estradiol, which is the brain functions, the foggy brain gone, muscle mass building, good cardiovascular output with the estrol, which is protection of breast tissue. So in the studies so far, it's showing that bioidentical hormone replacement is not a risk for breast cancer. The next question I would ask myself is, what if I have breast cancer? What if I have breast cancer? This is where you have to be working with the provider. This is where you don't want to just go online and pick up a script, or better yet, treat yourself with any bioidentical, packaged stuff. This is where you now need to have proper breast care surveillance. You should be working with a proper breast care team. That breast care team and a physician who's willing to provide must have an agreed upon time where your risk and surveillance has been met, and there has to be that decision. It has to be a team effort.
A couple other questions, and there's been questions coming in on the chat as well, so I
Okay.
appreciate that. Keep sending them in here. I've been hitting some of them, but I'm going to just cover this one briefly. Does insurance cover BHRT?
Okay.
And in general, from a compounding perspective, if we are making you something which we call compounding, they typically do not cover the product. So that the question then beckons, what's the cost? And it's variable based on dosage, and how much you're getting at a time. But in general, we for a month supply is around $40, 2 months is $60, and in 3 months it gets a little bit cheaper at around $80 a month. So insurances do not typically recognize compounds, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
despite the success that we have seen.
Yeah.
Um, could one of the questions in the chat, could perimenopause symptoms be masked by hormonal birth control?
Oh, I love that question. That's amazing. The answer is yes, 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 yes. And so if you think about it, you are creating an artificial cycle, right? You have two products, or you could even be on a well, let me back up. I was going medical there. It depends on what type of oral contraceptive, or whether it's an IUD, or whether it's an injection. But I'm just going to lump them all together and just call them contraception. The point is that you are subverting the natural release of an ovum, which is an egg, that's going to eventually make a certain amount of your female hormone called estradiol, and eventually your body will make progesterone for you, and then you have a period. That's being taken over. So you're technically already in an artificial menopause. Now, this gets a little bit uncomfortable to hear, but you have to think of it that way, that that cycle and that period is not technically a natural cycle because you are creating that cycle.
Okay. Probably going along with that, they were asking about PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Can BHRT help that?
Yes. And this brings me back to where you want to work with a physician who has some little bit of background in what I call family practice medicine or internal medicine, because they're going to be comfortable working with you with PMDD. At the same time, you also want a physician who has now gotten comfortable, has spent the time to understand how bioidentical hormones can be used in younger patient population, not perimenopause, not menopause. We're talking people that are still in their reproductive years, and it's done and it has been done and can be used for that.
Would you take BHRT at the same time as birth control?
No, no, no. So the answer is no, no.
Yeah.
You can't, that's a great question, but you cannot, you can't, it's like confusion. What signal is your body to follow? I think that could be maybe probably one of those no, um, not recommended.
Okay. This next question's pretty broad, so you don't go into as much detail as you want, but what are the best lifestyle choices for aging well in your 40s? And maybe even along that, what are vitamins and what are supplements that we could take to help BHRT work its best?
So I'm going to start from what I call the foundations in life. The foundations are the pillars of health. There's no getting around them. Number one is vitals. You have to be the guy who drives your interest in knowing what your vitals are. Please, please, please do not wait to see a personal physician or family practitioner to know what your regular blood pressure is, your regular resting heart rate is, your regular. You want to know these things because once you start to understand a pattern, you're going to be ahead of the curve in picking up when something is different. Nutrition, you are what you eat. So, this is the time in life to pivot to nutrient dense food. This is the time to pivot. It's not about weight loss. This is about aging wonderfully. This is the time of pivoting into what I call food being very intentional, looking for nutrients that are what we call macro. Everyone knows about your carbs and your proteins, but what about the micro? The seleniums, the zincs, the copper. These are where you start to see the magic as you start to take that time in having a very diverse nutrition. So I want to put a huge plug. I'll get to supplements, but I want to put a huge plug for nutrition. This is the time to really be savvy about where you pick your food, where you shop, what's the food been exposed to, because it's going into your body. And sometimes we end up with things contaminating our systems, pesticides, plastics, microplastics. These will affect your aging. I would like to say sleep is my next favorite thing. I haven't seen anyone age well who doesn't sleep well. We're all walking around so stressed today, and we're just zipping through aging so fast because we have, like a candle, we're burning on both ends. I am a big one on sleep. So everyone who has come to my practice knows that I'm in your business. Sleep, 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 sleep. What is your sleep like? We do testing just to see if you have the right brain waves to support your aging process. The next after that, believe it or not, is risk factors. Stress, smoking or drinking too hard, uh, uh, being up all night, exposures, toxins. Those things will age you, no question about it. I think connectivity, spirituality has a beautiful role to play in aging. When you feel connected to something bigger than yourself, you have purpose. And with purpose, you have a strong desire to want to age well because you want to be around longer. When you don't have purpose, you don't have spirituality, I feel like you start to lose that zip and you start to say things like it is what it is. So that's number one. Number two, in the supplement world, there's so many things that we now realize. And one of the things that I encourage everyone to do is to have a provider who's willing to do some simple things that you would think everyone does but doesn't. B12 levels, vitamin D levels. We should be doing all these things. Getting a breakdown of your good fats called the omega-3s. We can check them. We can even check things like how stressed you are by your serotonin levels, your iodine levels. Wouldn't it be nice to know that you're not just grabbing a bag full of supplements and popping everything, hoping for the best? Or having or having some clarity as to why you're now adding omega-3, why you're now adding iodine. Not everybody should be on it, by the way, but why you're adding it, why you're now taking maybe something to help you with removal of a lot of inflammation, because your testing shows that. So there's so many things out there. You're going to hear buzzwords, glutathione, NAC, resveratrol. I can go on and on. 5-HTP, ashwagandha, rhodiola, adaptogens. The list is huge. It's huge, but you don't need everything. You just need to know what it is that you need. But again, the pillars, the pillars, the pillars of health, I cannot underemphasize it. You've got to do that. I didn't say exercise. I'm going to quickly run and say exercise, please, 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 exercise.
Yeah, that's terrific. I will make one comment. If you follow us on Facebook, we actually are doing a seminar on sleep next Thursday, and you don't have to be in our area. We're doing it live, but we're also doing it Facebook Live so that you can
Hmm.
watch that or watch the recording after the fact.
Fantastic.
So if you need some help with sleep, I think you'll get some practical
Fantastic.
suggestions from our
Fantastic.
seminar next Thursday at 3 o'clock. But again, it'll
Fantastic.
be recorded. So
Fantastic.
couple other questions. One sort of touched on it, but is BHRT a lifetime commitment? Is it safe for women in their 60s? I think those kind of go hand in hand.
Yes, so I feel like these questions are the hesitations. Nothing in life should ever be told to anybody that it's forever. Because if that were the case, when I started practicing 30 years ago, people asked me, should I be on this pill forever? Now we're 30 years later, we've discovered better and new things. So I'm excited about the way things change, and change is a good thing. Change is a great thing. So I will not say forever, but the question I should ask is why not? If this allows you to be the best you can be, if this allows you to live life to the fullest, if there are no risk factors or mitigating reasons not to be on it, if this ages you gracefully, the question is, would you want to be on something that could age you gracefully as long as there's no downside? Or will the fear of something that's not your problem be a reason to stop? Would be the way to look at it. So it's a pro and con thing. As long as there's no reason to have a con, and that's why you must have a provider and not do these types of things on your own, then the answer is we know women who are aging into their 70s, 80s who are on bioidentical hormones. And so I'm coming into this in the last 7, 8 years, but I met people like Dr. Pam Smith, honorable mention, who's one of my what I would call sheroes. She came to the Pennsylvania area, and she is in her 70s. And we got to all sit and chat. I think Wayne, you were there, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. She looks amazing.
Hmm.
And in her opinion, she's going to agree with this. Okay. And and they're not prying it out of her hands. Okay. And she is in the pioneer category of hormone replacement, has authored many books. So I am going to feed off of their expertise and say, these are physicians who are not just walking the walk, they're talking the talk. They're not just telling people to do it. She's telling us what she is doing. And we're looking at her going, wait a minute, I know people your age who look like not the way you do, don't talk the way you do. She's running around national, international, giving conferences. So if she's in her 70s, mid 70s, and is still happily getting the benefits, I would say just be open-minded
Hmm.
regarding the possibility that this may not be dangerous as we thought with the WHI when the study was a bit flawed to begin with.
Right. Yeah, she would say she's hormonally balanced. That's why her brain's still working well and she can go out and has the energy.
That's right. That's
So,
right. That's right.
absolutely. So, yeah, one last question I have here, and I think I've covered everything. Think I've hit most everybody's questions, and you can address this how you want. But the question it's kind of ties into the weight loss question, but how can I lose the stubborn belly fat naturally?
Okay. Um, is this somebody that came into this particular talk? Is that can we ask the person just share age, or is there a way we can say middle years? I just wanted a little context of that stubborn belly fat because I want to do a little bit of a conversation on it, but I just felt like a little more context without giving anything away personally would help me.
If
Or
you
was that a
that
prepared question?
it was, yeah, it was not on the chat. It was
Okay, okay,
a question
okay.
ahead, but without
Yes, yes, yes.
looking. But they just don't want to do
Um,
the weight loss injections, which I understand.
I
But what are
understand.
some
Yeah.
most effective? What are some other things they could be thinking about? I think about berberine, adding that in,
So one of the
reducing
things,
sugar.
yes. So one of the things I would say about stubborn belly fat is a couple things, right? You're looking at an insulin resistance. So let's take that first, okay? We're looking at a metabolic possible dyslipidemic, which, okay, so let me back up. I apologize again. What I'm saying right now is that we may be looking at changes in the way your pancreas is working. We may also be looking at a little bit of a discrepancy in the way your adrenal glands have embrace that particular challenge. And sometimes that middle weight can tell us a little bit about stress weight. It could tell us a little bit about perimenopause, menopause weight. It could also tell us a little bit about pancreas changes. So there are things that we call metabolic um, balancers or metabolic supplements like berberine he just mentioned that could help jumpstart not only the liver, but stabilize maybe the blood sugar level a little bit better and maybe start to get the body back into burn mode versus conserve mode. But we also have in some patients that just happens to be around the same time the stress levels are going up. So we may have what we call adaptogens that can help calm the adrenal glands up a little bit. I would also say that nutrients and nutrition sometimes may require a little bit of taking a look at to maybe see because we've been fed so many things. We've gone from low carbs to keto. You know, there's so much out there to There's so much that it sometimes is overwhelming. And it may not be a bad idea to have certain blood work like testing done to see where those balances are. And without even going on, say, the shots, maybe there could be a customization of an integrative weight loss plan that's not using the GLPs, especially if that's an area you're very sure may not be the one that you're looking to do.
There was one last question that just got put in, and I do want to thank everybody that put questions in. That's been very helpful, been great for the discussion here tonight. But the last question maybe you want to address and then wrap up is, does insurance cover the cost of office visits and what's necessary to be evaluated?
So one of the things I will be transparent about is that a lot of my patients who are my internal medicine patients, also my wellness patients, I think some of them are on the platform. And there are things that the insurance would like us to stick with. And just the same way that Wayne has mentioned that bioidentical hormone replacement is not covered by your insurance, I want you to just close your eyes and imagine that that may be uncomfortable for me as a primary care doctor, putting those in your medical records, knowing fully well that that's not part of my agreement with them to broach. So in my practice, I'll use myself as an example and a guinea pig. I have patients who do both. I have patients who just are strictly internal medicine. I try best not to kind of confuse them. And the way we've made it is we've made it very price point affordable. So for instance, to have a consultation with me online is $130 or so. And that allows me to get the work done. So I just like the compounding process, we don't want that to be a reason for you to give up. So this is not about having you stuck to me at the hips for life, okay? This is about just making sure that there's some ethics involved. There should be some good history taking. I personally will not prescribe any patient bioidenticals, and all my patients on this platform will attest to that. They know that I'll make sure I get them tested, and I will hound them at some point to get retested. So that means that even though we have our medical visits that are covered for insurance, we do have side visits where we can address these. And being their provider for both gives me a little bit of some wonderful balance. I know what they're on here, I know what I'm doing there. And for any patients who have primary care doctors, I would love to collaborate with your primary care doctor. So that way, if we start you on compounding, I will make sure you know what you're on so that you hand that over to your provider, hand that over to your GYN so that you don't feel the need that I have to manage everything, but I can help you with this angle. And you can keep your PCPs, keep your providers so that you're not wondering, well, how am I going to make this work? Okay. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's sort of a broad answer.
Very good answer. So that's the questions I have at this point. You can wrap us up here, Dr. Jatto.
Okay, I want to say this was nothing but amazing. I would love to hear from, oh, can my doctor order the blood work? Okay, I see a question. I have to answer that
Yeah,
question.
sure.
And that's from somebody very dear. So I have to answer that. The answer is yes. What I would love to do is that I want to make sure that we keep this information alive and out there. Um, I am going to do something real quick. Everyone who's on this, please email front desk at jattointernalmed.com with all questions. I believe that I owe you more answers that are individual. So I want to make sure that your medical providers know the kinds of blood work. Most medical providers will not have a good grip, nothing personal, but will not have a grip on the full panel to order. And so I have patients who sometimes come for their first consultation with me virtually, either telehealth or in person. And I can tell this is your traditional blood work and it's not going to be enough. So please, 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 email that so that I can make sure. Are there different kinds of hormone tests? Yes, yes, yes. So there are different kinds of hormone tests because you're going to have a fuller thyroid axis checked. I'm going to be doing a fuller adrenal testing. That's not part of a regular physical lab work. I just want you to know that it's not part of it. So if you go to your PCP and you have that cholesterol, that CBC, that metabolic panel, there's more. And it's not going to be enough just to get your estrogen or estradiol level. It's not going to be enough just to get your progesterone. We need more. And that's going to allow you to get the better picture of what's going to be the right way to do this. And one last plug. The question is blood work the only way? Nobody asked the question, but I'm asking the question. The reason why I'm asking this question is yes, but no. When you get tests like saliva versions or capillary levels, we can start to see the effects systemically of the hormone replacement and not the blood levels at that point in time. And especially for those who get started and need to be monitored. And for the lady who had said 6 months into, that to me was a huge red flag. The question is, has she had proper testing? Because if they're done by saliva method, it's very likely you can start to see what's going on. Is there a dominant problem? Is there other hormones that need to be balanced? So I know I took a little detour, but I do want to quickly say that. For anybody who wants to quickly, make an appointment, just for attending, please use the word BHRT 0320, BHRT 0320. If you call my practice, that automatically means that your consultation is $120 because you've taken one out of your busy day just to sit down, vibe with us, share with us, that we owe you back to make sure that at least you have some sort of a discount to be able to start your journey. And I look forward to hearing from everybody. But let me quickly do a vote of thanks. Wayne, I want to thank you. I want to thank you because I came to you with this idea. You didn't say no.
Mhm.
You
Turned out
leaned in.
great. Thank you. This was fun.
You leaned in and said, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody. It's a Thursday. We're all tired, but you took the time out. First day of spring. Think of this as a springboard to making sure that you start to think of your aging longevity as you have the power. You have it in your hands to make and decide how you want this to go. Please try to move a little bit away from conventional medicine because that's for disease states. I want to make sure that we understand today was about regenerative preventive wellness medicine. This is for people who are well and want to remain well. They're not the same thing. On that note, I want to thank everybody for coming. Wayne, again, thank you. Everybody who attended, thank you.
You're
The email
welcome.
to the front desk is available. Please, would love to respond to you. I have a team. We'll make sure they give me all those emails so I can respond. Have a blessed day, and I look forward to hopefully doing something in the future again. Thank you
Wonderful.
so much.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless.
Um,